everyone, welcome to the garden. Today we're going to be continuing our kind of how to grow growing guide series with Status. This is a highly requested video, so hopefully you guys like it. Basically, Status is a flower that I use for kind of a filler foliage a little bit, or it can be kind of, arranged in mass and flower arrangements for kind of a focal point type of flower. But what I really like about Status is that they're very unique in terms of the actual flower. For example, the actual flower is very papery. It has a very unique shape. Getting started how to grow these, very simple. In terms of selecting seed, we're talking about annual Status in this video. You can also find perennial statuses, but I personally have not grown them. It usually comes in shades of kind of like purple and lavender and things like that. You can also find it in light pastel peaches. Unfortunately, I haven't grown that one too much, so I don't have much footage of that. The thing to remember about Status is that I believe they are a somewhat hardy annual, meaning that they can handle a little bit of frost. However, here in my garden, it seems to get much too cold to overwinter them, and I've never had luck or success overwintering them here in my garden in zone 6B/7 here in Kentucky. I've tried it before, but unfortunately the plants died during the coldest part of winter. So if you live in a zone that has a warmer winter than I do, my winters get down to about 0 Fahrenheit at the coldest. If you have a warmer winter than I do, it might be worth a try. But for me personally, the best option in terms of starting my own Status is, of course, to start them in the spring. Now, I don't use, when I'm starting seeds, I don't use any kind of grow lights or anything like that. So, unfortunately, I can't offer any guidance in terms of that. But I do use the winter sowing method. The winter sowing method is extremely helpful. Basically, what it does, if you're unfamiliar with it, is it's the process of using, milk jugs or other recycled containers as miniature greenhouses to start our seeds. If you want more information about this technique for seed starting, we have a complete video. I'll put that link in the card so you can just click on it and see that. It allows me to start all of my seeds outdoors. No grow lights, anything like that, even when it's still cold outside. So it's a really great technique to learn. Since I do grow on a little bit of a larger scale here in my backyard, I use a winter sowing low tunnel, and that seems to get the job done very well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to grab a seed tray. I'm just going to put some paper in the bottom of this. This is just recycled paper that I have laying around, and all it does is keep the soil from falling out of the bottom of the tray, because I do like to use these open trays rather than the cell trays. And I am going to begin filling that tray with just a moist potting soil. I want this soil to be nice and moist. Afterwards, if it's not, you can always water it well with a fine mist afterwards. It's really not that critical. But the next step is I am going to take my Status seeds, and of course I am just going to sow them on top of the soil. Ideally, you can space them out so they will be very easy to transplant after they have germinated. I am notorious for spacing my seeds much too close. Fortunately, it is pretty easy to separate the Status at transplant time, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. My garden is very much a haphazard, happy mistakes kind of place. I know some people are much more meticulous than I am, so just do as you please. Once these seeds have been planted, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this tray and I'm going to put it in my unheated hoop house in my low tunnel, as I've already mentioned. And what's going to happen is when the time is right, I'm doing this at the end of January into February, hence the winter sowing method. Once the time is right, these seeds are going to start to germinate, so we don't have to really worry about them in our unheated low tunnel as they begin to germinate. We do want to keep an eye on the trays, making sure that they don't dry out, but that's normally not an issue. In fact, it's very rare that I will have to water these trays as they are germinating. Most of the moisture seems to really stay in that unheated low tunnel and work to our advantage. Once these seeds have germinated, they will continue to grow into some very, very healthy, robust seedlings. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage of that, but what I like to do is transplant these status seeds, these status seedlings into the soil as soon as the ground can be worked in the spring. Here for me, that means about the first week of April in my garden. As the plants begin to grow and keep growing, they will not look like much. They will grow kind of in a low to the ground rosette, kind of almost looking like a weed. If you're looking for a plant that has a lot of ornamental value, unfortunately, status isn't really it. You know, even as they are growing and getting larger before bloom, the leaves are cool looking. They are these kind of toothy looking petals that remind me of rickrack. You know, if you're a crafter, they remind me of rickrack, which I think is kind of cool. But other than that, they don't really do anything. Over time, as these begin to stretch and lengthen, you will see these kind of weird looking flower stalks begin to develop. The stalks are usually kind of like four-sided, and kind of boxy looking, which is very interesting and different than a lot of the plants that we grow. And the flower formation is also very different. It's kind of a branch of flowers that you can see here, rather than, you know, just one flower shooting up, which is kind of weird in itself as well. Status is very much kind of a odd flower that looks very, very different than anything else that I grow in the garden. It is important to note also that even from a spring planting, I would consider these status flowers a cool flower. From a spring planting, they will bloom very, very fast. You know, I think these are going to bloom in June. From planting out in April, the latest that they will bloom is in June. And just a very, very quick flower to put in the garden, get some beautiful cut flowers out of it, and then take it out and replace it with something else. So something to keep in mind if you're working in a small space like I do and you need to get the most production, you can plant these flowers, take them out, put a new flower for summer in, and really kind of arrange that kind of garden to get the most production for cut flowers. Each plant, even though each plant looks pretty small, they will produce several stems of status flowers. I think I counted one time, usually I get 8 to 10 stems from each plant. So even though they are a kind of small looking plant, they do manage to pump out the blooms. You can also wait to harvest these blooms. These blooms will be held on the plants for a few weeks and still look pretty good and still be able to use for cut flower arrangements. And of course you can also dry them, which is really, really cool. That's something I want to start to explore in the future, drying the flowers. In terms of irrigation, I usually do not water these more than, you know, just the rain that I get here in my yard. If you live somewhere drier, of course, that's going to be different. In terms of fertilizing these, this is another plant that I do not fertilize at all. Basically, you know, as long as my flower beds are amended well with some good high quality finished compost at the beginning of the season, I transplant right into the bed, and these plants don't seem to have any trouble whatsoever. I've never noticed any trouble with pests or disease or anything like that. So other than needing to start them indoors or start them outdoors in the winter sowing, using the winter sowing method, you know, these are a fairly easy plant, especially for beginners who want to try their hand at growing their first kind of hardy annual flowers and may have missed the fall planting window or live in a zone that's a little bit too cold. That's really about it for this video. I hope that it was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. It is so appreciated. As always, you know, please leave a comment. It helps us so much. Tell me, have you ever grown status before? Will you in the future? Why won't you? Love to know all about it. I'm always learning so much from you guys. It's incredible. And I am just so fortunate to be able to learn from such a great community of flower gardeners. If you're new, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. That will give you notifications whenever we post a new video. We're always trying to post new content related to growing flowers and everything like that. So it would be greatly appreciated. Be sure to share with a friend. Everything, all my links to stuff is down in the description. That includes our blog, which is where you can find more information about a lot of the things that I post here. as well as you can check out our Instagram at Freshcutky. I'd love to have you follow us on Instagram, and support us on Patreon if you'd like to support the channel, if the channel is helpful. I'm so appreciative of that as well. I hope that you are having such an incredible day, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye, guys.